Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Haydale PLC investor presentation. Questions are encouraged. They can be submitted at any time via the Q&A tab that's just situated on the right-hand corner of your screen. Please just simply type in your questions and press send. The company may not be in a position to answer every question it receives during the meeting itself. However, the company can review all questions submitted today and will publish our responses where it's appropriate to do so on the Investor Meet Company platform. Before we begin, we would just like to submit the following poll, and if you'd give that your kind attention, I'm sure the company would be most grateful. And I would now like to hand you over to the executive management team from Haydale PLC. Simon, Patrick, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Thank you very much, and welcome to this presentation from Haydale PLC. Today, we're going to provide an update to investors on the changes which have taken place in Haydale over the course of the past financial year, the progress that Haydale has made towards the commercialization of what was an R&D-led organization into an advanced material and clean technology company. We will touch on the recent acquisition of SMCC, the role that plays in driving forward this commercialization. We'll explain the business in SMCC, and we will talk to the progress that we have made with integration. We will also be closing with the 15-month period review, the results which were recently announced for the year through to 30 September. So I'm Simon Turek, the Chief Executive of Haydale, and with me is Patrick Carter, our Chief Financial Officer. I've talked through the agenda here, which you'll see us cover as we work through the slide deck. I'd like to start by talking about the scalable national platform that we are building, which is all about taking that core technology that exists in Haydale, that plasma functionalisation HD+ unique capability, and how we are producing proprietary products as the primary vehicle for commercializing that technology. This does reflect a change in strategy from Haydale's prior approach, which was much more service-led, consulting-type revenue-led business, to one which is now very much focused on commercializing, productizing, and monetizing the technology through product introduced into market. You'll be familiar with the JustHeat brand as being the current primary products that we have introduced to market. And what's important to stress here is that the underfloor heating solutions that we have introduced over the course of the past year are the first step in both what will be a wider JustHeat brand of heating panel related technologies, but also the first step in a set of products that Haydale will be introducing to market. Those JustHeat products in the underfloor heating context are now commercially validated, having completed trials and deployments into a wide variety of sectors of the market. There is proven performance in field, and we have focused on building out the supply chain and the manufacturability, the scalability of producing this product in uniform. We have now, through the acquisition of SMCC, also brought to the group a national delivery capability. What SMCC represents is two important components. Firstly, in the lead generation context, a zero-cost customer acquisition model through its embedded partnerships with major banks, utilities, and corporates. That leads to a platform that is capable of taking customers on a full journey from initial inquiry through quotation, design, conversion, delivery, and ultimately aftercare revenues. This puts the group, the combination of these two component parts now puts the group on a clear financial trajectory. We have contracted revenues that already cover 100%, more than 100% of our H1 expectations. The guidance that was provided by Cavendish to the market as part of the transaction and associated fundraise in December of 25. We are targeting positive EBITDA within 12 months of that transaction. That's the first quarter of our full year 27, or the last quarter of this calendar year. To expand on the efforts that we undertook last year, full year 25 was very much a strategic reset. And as that chapter closes, I'd be very keen to stress that that year should not be seen, the results which were published in the past 3 weeks should not be seen as a baseline or forward run rate indicator. We undertook a complete rationalization of the business, closing, exiting, divesting from the overseas operations and the non-core operations in the UK. And by that, I mean those operations which were not associated with the HD Plus functionalisation technology, that core proprietary IP that defines Haydale. We have refocused on that IP and the productisation of it. So this saw us exit circa 80% of revenue generating activities, but these were structurally loss-making activities. And what we have introduced is a structurally new revenue base associated with that product go-to-market. In exiting from those activities and consolidating, we reduced the run rate cost base of the group by 69% by the end of that full year period. The balance sheet was materially de-risked as a result, including the removal of those overseas leases, those pension liabilities, and those significant legacy intangibles associated with things like the US carbide tooling business that are no longer with us. We raised at the end of the period 5.75 million gross alongside the acquisition of SMCC. And importantly, as we look to that trajectory towards EBITDA profitability, that fundraise provides us with a fully funded position to take us through to and beyond that point, covering both the anticipated working capital and the CapEx involved. To take us back to what Haydale represents, and it's important given that we are in the graphene space to remind that Haydale is not a graphene company in the sense that we mine or produce graphene itself. We sit at a different point in the value chain. Our technology enables us to take graphene of all forms, in fact, other nanomaterials in a wider context, to change their surface chemistry that enables them to be deployed into industrial processes, into materials, into products that can be delivered to market. And that's where our focus within the business is now. It's on a core set of applications of that functionalization of graphene. In particular, it's around energy efficiency. What we are producing are products that enable heat, particularly, to be conveyed into or out of settings more efficiently, therefore at a lower cost base and lower carbon footprint than other approaches, technologies, and applications. In the heating context, JustHeat, our graphene-enabled heating panels, is the mainstay products that we have started. This has been launched in an underfloor heating context where it is being introduced into buildings being electrified as an alternative to forms of heating like air source heat pumps. We are soon to be launching into market coving and skirting products developed in conjunction with NMC Group. These are focused on particularly the social housing sector, damp and mold applications, which are again about introducing heat efficiently into applications where it's needed. We launched towards the end of last year a subsequent product in the cooling context. This again is about using the properties that we can unlock in graphene to more efficiently transfer heat away from particular settings, in particular server racks in data centers. Those products are currently in commercial trials and will form the second product that Haydale takes to market as part of this renewed focus on commercialization through proprietary products. We do, however, continue with some of the advanced materials activities that we undertake for third parties, in particular, our partnership with Petronas. These activities continue to involve the manufacturing of products here in Ammanford, which are then delivered to third parties for them to undertake the sales, the distribution as part of their own business strategies. We are moving, in particular, these activities from historical R&D-led type revenue to manufacturing, royalty-based and leasing type revenue streams, where ultimately we will be leasing machines, RHD plus reactors, to those third parties to deploy line side, which introduces new regular recurring subscription type revenue and royalties on the sale of end products. To focus now on JustHeat and to start with the validation of that product, which has taken place over the course of the past year. So our underfloor heating product is one that we introduced to market from prototype through to commercial deployment within the course of 6 months last year. That highlights the intensity and the effectiveness that we've brought to the business in being able to generate and deploy commercial products. We focused on building the supply chain and the production viability, and importantly, the installation and distribution capabilities in those initial settings that we have targeted. We started with the social housing sector, focusing on relationships with housing landlords and local authorities. What we have seen over the course of the past year is an increased recognition of the applications that this product can have by our customers in settings much further beyond residential. There's a set of residential adjacent markets that we are seeing unlock, in particular, student accommodation, care homes, hotel type industries. But beyond residential and residential adjacent, there are also important markets being unlocked in industrial and manufacturing type applications. You can see on the right-hand side here a couple of images of deployments of JustHeat recently taken place. At the top, we have a manufacturing site, an essential oils business that needs to maintain a particular temperature within its facilities. It is tested and selected JustHeat as the heating system capable of delivering that uniformity and that precision to the heat needed within its operating spaces. You can see at the bottom there an image from one of our partners in the US, who has this winter been undertaking trials externally to validate JustHeat as a product for snowmelt applications, both outside of buildings and within the roof space of buildings in that US market. This highlights the wide variety of applications that we're starting to see, and we're starting to build the capabilities to distribute into. Here are some further applications. Top left, we're seeing increased engagement from the agriculture and horticulture sectors, commercial greenhouses, garden centers, for example, who are seeing the ability to reduce energy consumption through the use of JustHeat as the heating source for those commercial greenhouse type applications. You can see also images from some of the internal deployments in more traditional building contexts, whether that's residential garages, whether that's a number of different types of installation too, under screed, under other types of floor covering. And this speaks to an important strategic partnership that we cemented towards August last year, starting with Interfloor. Interfloor, a large manufacturer of underlay materials. And that partnership is about introducing JustHeat as a combined product with their materials into the wide variety of flooring applications that they serve, pairing it with a number of different floor overlays. So rather than looking to work with a large number of flooring manufacturers, our partnership puts this right at the heart of the majority of flooring installations that take place across the UK and Europe. NMC is the partner that we're working with on the skirting and coving products. And again, wide distribution applications, and an example of how we're commercializing product, not on our own balance sheet, but that R&D and that building of the commercialization is increasingly being driven through third parties as well. Recognition of our product towards the end of last year at the National Energy Efficiency Awards, where JustHeat was awarded National Product of the Year. This is important because that was focused on commercial and in particular compliance-led applications, which positions the product well as we see grant funding schemes starting to focus on heating systems rather than, say, fabric-based interventions. To just remind the rationale for us entering this particular space as the vehicle to commercialize Haydale's proprietary technology. It being that heating is a significant source of energy consumption, carbon emissions in the UK's built environment. There are millions of buildings that are transitioning, that must transition away from fossil fuel heating. And in a lot of those retrofit environments, it is difficult to deploy other forms of technology. And JustHeat has been both specifically designed and is seeing take up for these very reasons. Its thin profile, its ease of installation. An example being that it can be installed in a 3-bedroom house in the course of a single day. To a house builder, that matters, where they would typically allocate 5 to 7 days for the installation of a full wet radiator system. For a hotel that is seeing room occupancy as a core driver of the materials that are put into its properties, the ability to introduce a product with no moving parts, no fluids, low maintenance is increasingly attractive as compared to other forms of underfloor heating with the trace and access issues where things go wrong. Well, importantly, we are now at the place where through the SMCC Impact Partner programs, we are embedding this in national programs that will touch on all of those customer sectors. The point that we're currently at is what I'd call a structural inflection, because having brought the product to market, validated, and now the distribution capacity, we are seeing increased revenue visibility. Historically, that R&D-led approach to commercializing Haydale resulted in lumpy and less predictable revenue streams. JustHeat, as we introduced it to market, didn't have the infrastructure, the talent, the emphasis around it to be able to drive it to market in the way that it needed. And so what we did in bringing SMCC into the group is bring a national sales organization, a program management and accredited installer network that enables us through its Impact Partner program, which is all about low-cost customer acquisition with major banks and utilities to drive the demand, to drive the lead generation for our products, starting with JustHeat and what will subsequently follow in the form of thermal fluids and beyond. But importantly, once we have those leads, it's about the ability to convert them, the ability to put the infrastructure around taking those leads right the way through to delivery and ultimately to being able to service simultaneously across the country the volume of interest that we were starting to see going into the last part of 2025. With this platform, we're now in a position to deploy at the scale that the product has the potential to enable Haydale to achieve. What this has resulted in, and what we announced as part of the results recently, is that we have contracted revenues that cover our expectations for this half. But it's important to note that that's not where it ends. Moving beyond H1, right the way through H2 and beyond, we have now partner-led pipeline programs, which are multi-year, have repeatable revenues involved, a number of cross-selling opportunities, and enabling us to deliver higher quality forms of revenue as a result. We're developing that infrastructure and subscription-based models to sit around these products and their deployment to, again, enhance forward visibility, predictability, and the quality of revenue that the group delivers for shareholders. I'm going to explain the SMCC model because this is the part of Haydale which is new to most investors. And it's important to understand those component parts and how they fit together. Because SMCC operates at several levels. I'm going to start with the front end and the lead generation, those impact partner programs that we've referred. So what SMCC has established is partnerships with a number of UK high street banks, with utility companies, particularly in the water sector, and with manufacturers like ABB and SmartVac. And what those partnerships do is they drive pre-qualified B2B leads to the SMCC platform. The service that SMCC is providing to those partner organizations is as an extension of their business, a vehicle for taking customers through their water and energy efficiency journeys, starting with the consulting, starting with the advisory to help them understand the interventions that would best suit their businesses. Then being able to bring the technical capabilities, the business units to drive the installation and delivery of those components as they're selected by the customer. But more importantly, because SMCC is sitting right across that journey for the customer, delivering every part of it, there is increased cross-selling opportunity. We've seen a number of instances of those customers arriving for e-mobility, EV charging installations, and leaving with renewable energy, water efficiency, and increasingly interest in JustHeat installations as well. From the perspective of those partners, what they are receiving back is not only the ability to offer a value-added service in energy and water efficiency to their customers, but the data around the impact that their customers' energy and water consumption reduction is having on the Scope 3 emissions of that bank, the ability to demonstrate to the water regulator the impact that the interventions that water companies are increasingly required to deliver are having. There's three types, as mentioned, and it's important to perhaps pick up on a tangible example around how this works. And let's take ABB, which is an exclusive distribution partnership that SMCC has for EV chargers with ABB in the UK. What this brings to SMCC is a pipeline of customer interest, those who have approached ABB to have AC, DC chargers installed. They're referred through to SMCC to take the customer all the way through the journey to completing that installation. And these are high quality engaged leads, as they are from the banks and the water companies as they're referred across to SMCC. The introductions are often at finance director, CFO, managing director level, and that sees high rates of conversion, circa 50% plus from the leads that SMCC is delivering. And because those impact partners pay for the provision of the services that are offered, that initial consultation advisory piece, this is zero cost customer acquisition for SMCC, the ability to talk to their perfect customer without the need to spend on sales and marketing to go out and find them. The customer then makes its way through those business units across those various different products that SMCC represents in the market. Circa 40 manufacturers are on SMCC's platform, using it to deliver their product, like ABB, into the UK market. And that's where JustHeat now sits. What we have achieved over the course of the past 2 months is a full integration of our sales and marketing capabilities from Haydale across into the SMCC platform. So JustHeat is now sitting in the energy efficiency business line alongside those other products that SMCC delivers to market. This is providing us with that infrastructure, the resources and the capabilities overnight that Haydale did not previously have. Here on this slide is the flywheel that SMCC represents. It starts with that referral, goes through that advisory, that identification process for the customer. There is then a provision of the measures back to the bank to arrange the financing. Then there is the delivery of the project, finally through to the measurement, the verification, and the provision of the impact data. What we can see from the way in which those impact partner programs have developed through their pilot stages is a rapid uptick in lead generation as those have been turned on. Right now, partnerships are in place with 3 major banks, 2 water utilities, and several manufacturers. Over the course of last year, a lot of those partner programs were going through pilot phases. And in fact, over several years prior, there was a long piece of work that SMCC went through with the likes of Barclays to take what was initially demonstrated to be so successful as a pilot that a full regulatory process was needed in order to be able to plug the SMCC platform into the bank's customer offering in the way that it is. That close level of integration required a regulatory process to enable non-financial products to be introduced to bank customers in the way that SMCC does. And now, over several years, having gone through that full process and being accredited to provide those services, with several other banks coming on stream rapidly thereafter, is demonstrating the value that that Impact Partner Program offers to enable products like JustHeat, like thermal fluids, and the wide range of other products on the SMCC platform to be driven into market at scale. And in the course of the 2 months since the integration with SMCC, we are rapidly seeing those partner programs expand, driven at the level of those partners themselves, wanting to see them go faster as a result of the rapidly delivered early engagement. At its core, the reason why clients approach and engage right the way through that process with SMCC is because there is an increased motivation when it comes to energy and water efficiency. That's why, as we talked about earlier, we're focused on commercializing Haydale's technology through energy efficiency products. Energy costs are now in the top 2 for most businesses, typically right there under people. So there's a drive to engage with this activity, but it is a very fragmented space. Businesses struggle to bring together all of those component parts that are needed in order to take a product like JustHeat all the way through to deployment within their chain of hotels, within the schools that they operate, within the hospitals or what have you. It is a complicated process to put a full solution wrap around a product. And that is what SMCC offers to both the manufacturer and also to the customer. A one-stop place to be able end-to-end to take the customer from interest right the way through to large-scale deployed programs. And the types of programs that SMCC is delivering is everything from single orders right the way through to multi-million-pound programs nationally across several years. And is ultimately all about saving those clients time and money, which from a JustHeat perspective is exactly the proposition that the product offers as well. It's all about efficiency reduction, and in like current economic one, we see some. Apologies, we just had a delay with the slide there. This is the next slide, and it's about how we have integrated the SMCC business within Haydale over the past 2 months. What we have done is define a new operating model for Haydale. Haydale PLC represents a group that now has 3 core operating pillars. There is what we call the production and innovation pillar, which is all about the proprietary technology Haydale. It's about our ability to deliver the products at scale that we have completed. It's about the R&D involved in taking the next set of products to market. Those coving and skirting products, those thermal fluids, and that which will follow thereafter. It holds the IP, importantly, that sits around and protects the products that Haydale represents. SMCC is what we call the go-to-market pillar. And as I said, now having fully integrated the JustHeat sales and marketing initiatives into that platform, it is both that Impact Partner Program, that national distribution network, and increasingly a digital marketplace and program management infrastructure that's focused on improving the quality of revenue through, as I mentioned before, longer-term recurring multi-year channels. Platform acceleration is the third part of our focus, and that is about expanding those partner ecosystems, those strategic relationships. As I said before, already starting to see Impact Partner Programs expand. That's the work driven there, along with those focuses on how we turn product deployment into higher quality revenue streams. So where are we in the value creation cycle? Well, having completed the reset, validated our technology in market through productisation, we are now very much in that embedding of the route to market. That will lead us through to revenue inflection. And we're seeing that already with the more mature business lines on the SMCC platform. JustHeat will follow. Thermal fluids is earlier in its development stage, but will come through thereafter. The business lines are at different stages of maturity, and that's important because that gives us a diversification of revenue stream as well. So while thermal fluids are beginning and undertaking their commercial validation and revenue starts, JustHeat is further along, and some of the business lines on the SMCC platform are particularly mature. I'm now going to hand across to Patrick, who's going to take us backwards to the 15 months through full year 25.
Yeah, thank you very much, Simon. So I wasn't going to spend too much time on the financials, partly because, as Simon said, this reflects a historic business that we no longer have. What's important to note in terms of the results we've just reported for the 15 months is we've recorded a group revenue of 2.51 million, but of that, 700,000 is really what relates to the ongoing business parts, of which roughly just under 50% is JustHeat related in one form or another. Through this period, we've maintained the gross margins. It's worth noting as the SMCC business comes on board, and to be clear, these numbers do not reflect any part of the SMCC business because this is pre-acquisition. But we do expect those margins to drop slightly just due to that mix. And and we've also got our adjusted operating loss is at 4 million, but that does include transitional cost base during the reset, during which point we were taking a lot of cost efficiencies that Simon's referred to before. On the next slide on the balance sheet, again, you'll notice there's a very big difference between the balance sheet we had at this time in June 2024 compared to the end of September 25. And that represents our exit from the US in particular, and also some of these other operations that Simon alluded to. Within that balance sheet also, you'll note that the loans element has come down significantly, and that's the conversion of the convertible loan note. And we've got post this balance sheet, so in January of this year, we raised a further 5.75 million, and as part of that SMCC acquisition. Because we're looking now to generate EBITDA positive from the start of next financial year, so the end of this calendar year, we do have tax losses across the two businesses of roughly 50 million, just over. That allows us to shield those profits from actually having to pay tax free for a while. So that will be helpful going forwards. And we certainly have the existing resources needed to support the operations for the anticipated EBITDA breakthrough that we've talked about. Handing back to Simon.
Thank you. I'd like to conclude by summarising the investment case for where Haydale is today. So having completed that structural reset, you've seen, as Patrick has highlighted there, the improved balance sheet and position, the reduced fixed cost base. We have increased costs as we've brought the SMCC business in, but it is structurally different costs to that which we were carrying in the past. We have validated products, Haydale's technology in the market through productisation, and are now seeing commercial uptick, significant partnerships secured, and transaction now happening through the SMCC distribution mechanism. From a national delivery perspective, what Haydale was lacking as we first entered the market with JustHeat has now been secured through that acquisition. And this gives us, with colleagues working across the UK each day under the SMCC platform, the ability to service those leads, which are increasingly with pace being generated through the impact partner programs. And finally, it's that revenue visibility. It's the fact that we have a more stable outlook, and also increased quality of revenue through those multi-year contracts, through those recurring and cross-selling opportunities. So for us, the focus very much now is on execution. It's on executing those partnerships and scaling the SMCC platform, both in its own right and the Haydale product through it. It's about executing on the delivery of JustHeat to the market to fulfill its potential, and on delivering the next set of products that will provide the growth which follows behind it. That brings us to the end of the presentation today. We'll happily turn to questions.
Perfect. Simon, Patrick, if I may just jump back in there, and thank you very much indeed for your presentation this afternoon. Ladies and gentlemen, please do continue to submit your questions just by using the Q&A tab that's situated on the right-hand corner of your screen. But just while the team take a few moments to review those questions that have been submitted already, I'd just like to remind you that a recording of this presentation, along with a copy of the slides and the published Q&A, can all be accessed via your investor dashboards. Simon, Patrick, as you can see there, we have received a number of questions throughout your presentation, and thank you to all of those on the call for taking the time to submit their questions. But guys, at this point, if I may just hand back to you to read out those questions and give your responses where it's appropriate to do so. And if I pick up from you at the end, that'd be great. Thank you.
Certainly. So taking the first question here, as an investor since 2020, what will change in future compared to the operations of Haydale in the past? How can you assure me that you're going to make a difference, and how will you outcompete other graphene companies? I think taking that last part first, as I started with, Haydale sits at a different point in the value chain to other graphene companies, not manufacturing the graphene itself, but having the process to take any graphene or nanomaterial and position it for use in any particular application. And so we don't see graphene manufacturers as the competition for Haydale. It is the products that we're introducing to market that are the area that we are most focused. Because again, when it comes to the core technology, our approach is globally unique and IP protected. And so where those third parties come to us for our help in developing their products, it's because Haydale represents the only in-class technology approach for achieving those outcomes. And obviously, what's going to change about Haydale from the sort of period since 2020? I'd suggest that what we have run through today in terms of the focus now on productisation as products as a means to commercialise Haydale's core technology rather than being service-led is very much what's different. And it's that aspect of bringing the distribution capability, the lead generation capability into Haydale, rather than relying on third parties to sell and distribute the product for us, is a core differentiating feature of our approach to the energy efficiency market. Where do we think the stock price will be in the last quarter of 2026? What I'm going to say in response to that is to note, as we announced in the results recently, that we are anticipating undertaking a share consolidation at the right point in time. That will most likely be after we have achieved EBITDA positive profitability, but to flag to shareholders that is something which we do expect to undertake.
Shall I pick up the next one? So which graphene do we use in our products and why? So I think it's worth saying that actually we are graphene agnostic, but what we have done is categorized about 400 types of graphene from various other suppliers. So we understand what applications they're good for, and they all vary by density, by their surface chemistry, by a whole number of factors. And what we do is we try to choose the best graphene for the product that we are making, and actually second sourcing or third sourcing other competing graphenes in order to have that robustness of supply. So it will vary by the application, it will vary by what end result we want from the graphene. So we don't actually specifically buy from anyone in particular.
And what is the approximate cost of installing JustHeat in a 3-bedroom semi? So it very much depends on the particular aspects of the property itself, its starting point in terms of energy efficiency, because heat loss calculations will drive the amount of material which is needed. But what we have done is to position JustHeat in the market as a competitive alternative to both other forms of underfloor heating, whether they be wire-based or hydronic underfloor heating systems, and as a competitive alternative to the installation of a wet radiator gas boiler system. And of course, there's two elements to consider to this. There's the capex and the operating costs. And so competitive from a capex perspective, but then real savings materializing from an ongoing operations cost perspective. Of course, when comparing to a heat pump, we're seeing the cost of a JustHeat installation as somewhere around half the cost of that type of technology.
So in terms of the next question about what's expected uplift in cross-selling from the integration of JustHeat and SMCC, I think it's worth just reflecting on the fact that as part of SMCC's process, they are paid to do an audit of the client's premises or locations, through which they will identify various curated products that they can bring to that client in order to solve and improve their energy efficiency or water efficiency. So whilst they might go in through WAVE, for example, on a water efficiency audit, as part of that, they will also identify energy efficiency products that we can bring to bear that actually improves both sides. So therefore, we expect there to be significant cross-selling opportunities in all of this, because actually what we've got is the entry point, and then we're able to own that client and make the most of that through the various solutions we have.
And JustHeat is applicable to a number of different vertical markets. How is individual market focus achieved organizationally? So the way that the business is organized within the go-to-market pillar is into a set of business units focused on particular types of technology. So energy efficiency, water efficiency, e-mobility, and the like. And so those business units serve customers of all geographic and also all different segments. So the team that's focused on energy efficiency, where our JustHeat products sit, will be coordinating the sale of the products to everything from those residential applications, residential adjacent, right the way through to industrial applications and what have you. So there isn't a distinction within the way that we operate between different segment types, but we have specialists in those technologies. And that's quite an important part of the model, because when the customer comes to the SMCC platform, after that initial appraisal, that survey, that advisory piece that is undertaken, they are then passed to the respective business units who are the specialists in that type of technology. And it gives us the ability to have a deep domain expertise in the technology that is being recommended, and installed, provisioned for, and ultimately maintained. And within those business units, there will be those who have colleagues who have experience in different sectors, but again, all coming back to the domain of the technology itself. How does SMCC qualify and monitor national installation network? So SMCC, Haydale PLC, does not retain the majority of the installation staff that are undertaking that work in the field. What the model that we operate is to drive the project management. So projects will be managed by a Haydale, an SMCC colleague, but often the installer undertaking the work is part of a highly vetted and accredited network that we maintain. And there is quite a significant amount of process that goes into validating, due diligence, onboarding, accrediting, and monitoring the compliance, behavior bonds, what have you, of those who are undertaking the work in the field. Training JustHeat is a great example of a product where we have put considerable stead into the training of installers who go into the field to deliver the product, so that we know, as the manufacturer, the quality is there each time the product is installed. And what's important is that we haven't had any instances of where that has not been upheld in the installations to date. And that is one part of the monitoring we're talking about here. It's also important to pick up on the types of frameworks that SMCC delivers under. So the sort of national frameworks with a number of hotel brands like Radisson and Hilton are mainstays of the SMCC business. SMCC has been providing services as the main energy efficiency provider to Hilton for over 10 years. And that speaks to the level of quality embedded within its systems and processes. How does the SMCC digital platform license work financially? You're referring here to a new part of the offering on the SMCC side, which is about introducing to the customer base a set of services which are provided on a long-term basis and for which subscription type recurring revenue is being introduced. So if we take, for example, the needs of a customer that comes to the SMCC platform is often around their ability to understand their energy consumption and emissions footprint, to be able to account for that in order to deliver against requirements within their business. For example, to be a supplier to a lot of major corporates, to win tenders, now requires businesses, SMEs all the way through, to have a handle on their energy and carbon efficiency. There are tools which SMCC now provides, both digital tools and supported tools to those customers, and those are provided under licensing arrangements which provide an ongoing revenue stream to the business, as along with abilities to capture and validate the energy reduction and emission reduction that is taking place, so that information can be fed into, whether it be those tender applications that can be monetized and used with the financing alongside the financing of the products themselves, so that can reduce an increased uptake of the underlying products. There's a big focus that we're putting onto facilitating the capex of products for those customers, so that there can be an increased pace of adoption of the products that the group offers. And that's both through working on the ways in which we integrate with financing providers to facilitate that capex, but increasingly the introduction of novel and new forms of finance, particularly those tied to the energy and carbon performance of the assets, which are being brought to customers, to the platform under that digital model.
So the next question is around recurring revenues and how our business model is going to create those. And there's a number of forms of these. You have got the impact partners, whereby the banks themselves, for example, will refer leads to us. So we will get new customers coming through, but it's recurring revenues from the point of view of where it's originated from. Those clients, once they've been referred across, actually become our clients. And as we have with the Hilton, it's then for us, having got the introduction, to be able to maintain those relations, to go back to those customers year after year with new innovations and things that might help them once we understand what their business is. For others, so for example, with the not the care homes, the social housing providers, where we're doing things there, there are contracts there where they have a number of properties, and every time there's a void property, they're looking to install JustHeat. So this is a framework effectively over a number of years, sort of 3 years, whereby over that period of time, we will eventually go through all of their housing stock, but only as the void properties come up. And then the final item is more around care packages, so aftercare around the ABB charges, for example, or these other solutions where we are offering continual support for those installations that we're doing, which again brings more touch points with those customers to stay on board with them and to understand their ongoing needs at various points. So that is very much at the forefront of what we're trying to create here.
And where can customers see JustHeat in action? Several places. We have a set of demonstration rooms that are now live around the country, starting with our premises here in Ammanford in South Wales, down in SA1 at the University of Trinity St David, currently being installed over in Bury St Edmunds at the SMCC site, and also at the National Renovation Self-Build Centre in Swindon. Interfloor has been installing and trialling our products at their premises in the north towards Yorkshire as well.
So in terms of how's the validation process is going for other products like the fluid, it's worth saying with things such as our work that we're doing with NMC about the coving, and it's really an iteration of the existing product. So it is the heater mat, just in a different format or different size and width, etc. So it fits behind the coving. So the product actually is up and working, and we are just testing it now and iterating it to work properly with those partners that we have. And with the thermal fluid, it's currently in commercial testing, and at the appropriate point we will be making the appropriate announcements to the market, but it is out there and subject to being trialed in real life situations.
Data centers, how are we planning to work with third parties? So we have established an approach to trialing to the commercial deployment of the transfer fluid, which is very much in partnership with those who are in the space of building, designing, operating data centers. And this follows the approach that we have taken since introducing the underfloor heating product. So the underfloor heating product was largely developed on our own balance sheet, but then increasingly in conjunction with strategic partners as we took it to market. From the perspective of the follow-on products, coving, skirting, thermal fluids, that's increasingly developed under development agreements with third parties. Funding is brought to those initiatives, and then those distribution channels are sitting there, are activated as a result to begin the initial commercial deployment, following which, of course, we introduce those products onto our go-to-market platform to SMCC to drive to scale into the market.
So the next question is around, will there be a continued focus on researching and pioneering new and emerging technologies, or simply build on what we currently have? I think this is a matter of timescales. So in the short term, we are very much focused. We are actually trying to get ourselves to be EBITDA positive. We need to build on what we currently have, and therefore very much leveraging our existing R&D that we've already done around the JustHeat, and in particular heater ink technologies and thermal fluid technologies. There are a number of other products that over the past 5-10 years we have developed that actually we will be looking at again to bring forwards as we move forwards, which is leveraging again the HD Plus underlying technology. And therefore it's not that we're not continuing to do R&D, we are, but actually in the short term it's all around iterating these products and variations of these products to get them into market, with very much the intention that we will come out, as Simon has said, with additional products as we move forwards.
So is the present geopolitical situation impacting on our supply chain? And it's not. We did quite a lot of work last year when tariffs were introduced, particularly at the point where we had exposure to suppliers in the US. We did quite a lot of work to diversify the supply chain to second and third source, and to ensure that we have access to the ingredients, the raw materials that we need sufficiently in advance for the demand that we're serving. And so we have quite a sophisticated strategy now and supply chain management around the products that are in production, our underfloor heating and coving and skirting panels, but similarly as we introduce other products onto the platform. And from, importantly, looking at the SMCC platform side, the manufacturers that it works with to deliver products that are other than the proprietary Haydale ones, there are no issues there with regards to stock and access and ability to deliver on contracted revenue as a result of trade disruptions.
And there's a related question around supply chain in respect to graphene sourcing. Now, graphene is increasingly becoming a commodity product, a byproduct of other processes, and there's a wide variety of suppliers in the market, each of whom's graphene is slightly different, but we are at the point where, due to our process, we can take graphenes of the right density and the right sort of type and hone them to work with our applications, which is why we are able to second source, a third source graphene for our underlying technologies. And therefore, we don't particularly have a supply chain issue with graphene.
So Octopus is a shareholder. Is there any collaboration with Octopus Energy? So yes, indeed, you're right. Octopus is an important and collaborative shareholder, and we engage closely with them. At this point in time, our JustHeat products are not distributed through any of the energy utilities. But as we've seen on the SMCC side with the water utility industry, the utilities are and can be important impact partners. And we do expect to continue growing the impact partner program as we move forward. How does your CE mark approval relate to the different uses and types of graphene? So the CE mark is product focused. So we have a CE mark and a UL mark for the North America market on our underfloor heating panels, and that is focused on the application of obviously our graphene technology into the product. So it doesn't depend on our use of a particular type of graphene. It doesn't depend on a particular recipe for its functionalization. It's all about the product itself, its performance against safety and technical standards for those given markets.
So will we need to raise more money from shareholders, and if so, when? There are no plans to do that at the moment. We believe we're fully funded to get ourselves to EBITDA positive and therefore cash generative. If we do come back to market, we expect it will be in respect to growth opportunities, and we will do the necessary at that particular point in time.
I think the next question is largely the same. So the final question here on the list, we were collaborating with a vehicle manufacturing company in the US. How is that evolving? Yes, indeed. And that was related to our thermal fluids product. And as said, the thermal fluid is in commercial validation in the market with a number of parties. We're focused in the conversation today on data centers, on the applications around server racks, particularly, and that isn't the extent of the applications that we see for the fluid. Very much as we are seeing increased sector interest, a wide variety of applications for JustHeat, we expect that our thermal fluids will have similarly wide applications. In this particular context, automobile manufacturing production lines, and we continue to test in those environments.
Perfect.
Let's bring us to the end of the questions.
Simon, Patrick, if I may just jump back in there, thank you very much indeed for being so generous with your time there and addressing all of those questions that came in from investors this afternoon. And of course, if there are any further questions that do come through, we'll make these available to you after the meeting. But Simon, perhaps before really now just looking to redirect those on the call to provide you with their feedback, which I know is particularly important to yourself and the company, if I could please just ask you for a few closing comments just to wrap up with, that'd be great.
Yes, thank you very much. Well, thank you everyone who has joined today, and the very engaging questions that you have posed. We very much enjoy hearing from and engaging with our shareholders, and we look to undertake this exercise on a regular basis going forward. We will be back with our half-year results towards the latter part of May, and would like to present you with further updates at that point in time. Thanks to our shareholders for the support through this reset period, and in the business that we have now built and are taking to market going forward. There was a question around engaging with us in the form of the JustHeat product. We very much would encourage shareholders who, and from a consumer perspective, those who are interested in a JustHeat product, to visit one of the sites that we have for demonstration, or to get in touch, and we'd be very keen to engage with you around your own projects.
That's great. Simon, Patrick, thank you once again for updating investors this afternoon. Could I please ask investors not to close this session, as you will now be automatically redirected for the opportunity to provide your feedback in order that the management team can really better understand your views and expectations. This will only take a few moments to complete, but I'm sure will be greatly valued by the company. On behalf of the management team of Haydale PLC, we would like to thank you for attending today's presentation. That now concludes today's session, so good afternoon to you all.